Good evening, everyone. It's Necro Thursday, and it's time for the Necromaniacs Horror Podcast. How's it going, Jeff?
It's going good, man. What's up with you?
Oh, the fall season seems to be encroaching on us, and I'm really excited about that,
Yeah,
especially
me
up
too.
here in the beautiful Northeast. We haven't quite gotten the seasonal leaf changing yet, but that's going to happen any week now, so I'm excited.
Yeah, you're just weeks away from that. Here in Austin, we don't really get like the fall feeling till like end of October-ish or November. So it still very much feels like summer.
And just an FYI, right now I'm drinking I made my own pumpkin spice latte actually with my own ingredients here. So yeah, it's funny. Like I up until 2 years ago when I met my fiance, like I'd never had a pumpkin spice latte, and
Mm.
she kind of shamed me into having one, and ever since then I've been totally into it.
Hey, man, that's part of getting older. Enjoying things you used to make fun of.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
I don't like pumpkin anything, so this time of year is always like rough for me.
Oh
Everyone's
yeah,
getting
dude.
pumpkin spiced ice cream and all that stuff. I don't like pumpkin. I never have. Pumpkin pie to me is like the most disgusting thing.
That's one of my favorite pies, man. Pumpkin pie and apple are my two favorites. So,
And yeah,
yeah,
I would go with chocolate cream and pecan for me. Those are my two
pecan
favorites.
pecan's pretty good too, man. Pretty
Yeah,
much down with that. Yeah,
chocolate pecan too. That's nice.
yeah. Um, yeah. So I don't know. Things have been going good. Fall's impending. There's just got that. The nights are a little bit cooler. Been listening to a lot of Sam Hain in preparation for the oncoming Halloween season.
Nice. Yeah, I love breaking out those records that just hit a little bit different in October. I look
Oh,
forward to
dude,
it every year.
totally, man. Like just the other night, we were driving around. Like I think I was telling Mike that I had this minor procedure done. I had this like I don't know what you call it, a tumor or a lesion or whatever. It was inside my mouth.
Oof.
I had that removed. So the day that I got it taken out, Tina took me out for ice cream. So we're like driving around, got the windows down. I'm listening to Walk the Night by Sam Hain, and we went and got some ice cream, and it was just a cool evening, man. It was nice, and I had a hoodie on. It was nice.
Oh yeah, dude. I love that. And I think Danzig would have himself would approve of this.
Yeah, Danzig would approve, definitely.
Yeah. You've been checking anything out?
Yeah, actually, last night we saw the new Beetlejuice movie.
Oh,
Beetlejuice. Yes.
how was it?
It exceeded my expectations, man. I love the original. Just it's an iconic film, and I was just like, oh man, that they're gonna try to like cash in on this whole thing and bang out another one of these things 30 some odd years later.
Yeah.
Uh, but you know what, man? I loved it. I thought it was great. It was not just a rehashing of the original story. It was an expansion on the universe, I think. It was very cool. And it was good to see Winona Ryder back in the saddle as Lydia, and yeah, it was just really cool. And I recommend it, it's especially this time of year.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I was just a kid when the first one came out. I don't know, like 11 or something or 12, somewhere around that. And it's good to see Tim Burton going back to, well, I know it's a sequel, but it's good to see him going back to like an original idea. Whereas
Yeah.
Tim Burton did like 20 years of doing like, well-known IPs like Dumbo and Alice in Wonderland and things like that, and to very mixed results, I would say. So it's good he's back in like his own sandbox.
Well, this definitely has a Tim Burton signature. You know what I mean? It's that same quirkiness, that darkness, it's all there. And I really, really liked it.
And hey, Michael Keaton, that guy
Uh,
has really been picking some good stuff lately. I always enjoy seeing him on the screen.
Absolutely. And the other thing I watched last night after we went to Beetlejuice, we watched a movie on Shudder called Demon Disorder.
Hmm.
And I enjoyed that as well. It's an Australian sort of possession film. In some ways, it reminded me of When Evil Lurks, where it looks at like demonic possession as almost this physical, body horror kind of thing, you know?
Oh wow, I didn't know about that. I've been checking some stuff out on Shudder this week as well.
Yeah, definitely hit that up. I know Brandon didn't like it. He watched it last night too, and I saw this morning that he wasn't into it. But I was like, man, I thought it was great. It was like it's got that rough, like Australian outback vibe to it as well, which I know that you're into, and I
Yeah,
both of us enjoy that sort of thing.
yeah. We have a whole series. We got more coming up with our Mayhem Down Under.
Yep. And I didn't watch this, but I rented it, and it's ready to go for later today. Starve Acre, which is
Starvaker.
yeah, it's I remember our quality control manager Rennie mentioned this in one of our text threads that we had, and then I watched a Kermode review of it yesterday, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot all about this movie, and it's like very British folk
Oh,
horror kind of slow moving sort of movie. So we're gonna watch that later. I opted to wait until not later late in the evening to watch it because those movies tend to yeah, they're slow, you know what I mean? So you want to pay attention. So I'll
yeah.
watch that later.
Well, you said British folk horror, so I'm sold already.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's got Matt Smith in it who plays Damon from the Game of not the Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon.
Oh,
Um
okay.
yeah, he was in The Crown, that kind of that dude. So
Two shows I've not seen.
yeah.
Awesome.
That's it. I've been doing a lot of reading. I just finished the Paul Tremblay book, horror movie. I actually this is kind of related. At the same time I picked that up, I picked up Paperbacks from Hell, which is a really cool book that talks about the paperback horror explosion in the 80s. And they mentioned three novels that kind of kicked it off: The Exorcist, The Other, and Rosemary's Baby. Now,
Hmm.
I read The Other, I read The Exorcist, but I did not read Rosemary's Baby, so I just started reading that book this morning.
Oh, interesting. There's some sort of prequel show in development for Rosemary's Baby as well.
Um, 50-50 expectations on that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a true classic, one of the greatest horror movies of all time. I don't think it needs to be bothered, but hey, I try to keep an open mind with
Yeah.
those things.
That's about it for me, man. What about you?
Uh, yeah, a couple things. I checked out a lot. I We talked about it a few weeks ago. You watched Night Watch, rewatched the original Night Watch. So I went and checked that out again. I hadn't seen it since I lived in Boston, since I lived near Tower Records with Tower Records had a video store and I would just rent everything. So I haven't seen this movie in a long time and it was cool.
Yeah.
It Yeah, I mean it was very European. It feels a little bit dated, but I can see what I liked about it all the way back then in the late '90s. I started watching the sequel and I fell asleep. Did you see the sequel?
Thing happened to me. That's been available for a while now, for a few months, and I haven't went back to watching it yet. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna watch the sequel.
Yeah, I gotta finish that. What else? Okay, I watched the new M. Night Shyamalan movie, Trap.
Yeah, man. What's the story with that?
Oh boy. It might be a fun movie to cover. It was completely absurd, just completely ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed watching it though. It was very entertaining, but one of the most over the top absurd things I've ever watched. Really, I guess it's what we've come to expect from M. Night Shyamalan of the last 20 years. It's certainly not a callback to his heyday of Unbreakable, Signs, Sixth Sense. It's nowhere in that league. But I mean, it's entertaining. We were howling with laughter watching it.
So anything else?
Yeah, there's a new horror movie on Netflix called The Deliverance.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Not the
And
one that Ned Beatty gets raped in, but yeah, okay, there's a new one.
right, yeah, exactly. It's
All right.
it's based on a true story. Well, quote unquote true story. I remember when that true story, there was an article about it going around about this woman and her possessed kids, and it had actual witnesses, like someone from the Department of Child and Family witnessed the kid crawl up a wall. Um, the movie version, I mean, it would make a great double feature with Trap. Like it was just, it was just so, it was really, really awful. It's a strong contender for worst movie of the year. But if you're like me and you enjoy like a really truly awful movie, it's definitely worth your time, you know?
Scott Hull texted me about us possibly doing that, and I think he named you specifically as who I should team up with to talk about this movie.
Ah, okay, yeah, for Deliverance, yeah, it's it's a howler, that's for sure. Um, and I don't know if I mentioned this on this show before, but I heard you talking about it on Brandon Legion's Horror Wolf podcast. I saw the TV glow.
Yeah,
Did,
I gotta check that out. I haven't seen it yet.
yeah, man, yeah, it's okay. It's a lot of cool ideas. And, what I think you'll dig about it is it has like this creepy pasta vibe to it.
Oh, okay.
It
Yeah.
seems like it could have been part of that Channel Zero show, like the first season of Channel Zero kind of had like that vibe, but a little less horror. It's not quite a horror movie, but it has horror elements. It's interesting. I wouldn't mind watching it again and really giving my thoughts on that one. It might be a good movie to cover.
Yeah, I'm so fascinated by creepy pastas, like that short format, like sketch, but yet it's a complete story. You know what I mean? It's like a page and a half, and then that's all you get, but you get a complete experience though with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a couple creepypastas I read that, yeah, really some of the shorter ones were the better ones. And I guess, I mean, people add to it too. It's almost like Wikipedia, people just add to the lore. Um, yeah, it's interesting stuff, but definitely worth checking out. I think if you're a fan of like, artier horror movies, it's definitely up your alley.
It's on my list for sure.
Mm,
Definitely.
yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I think that's about it.
So let's run down our brothers in the horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. As everyone knows, that we're part of a larger organization whose sole mission is to destroy mediocrity in whatever rock it's hiding under. So that's what we're trying to do here. Kicking things off on every other Monday, we've got Brandon Legion's Horror Wolf 666. On Tuesday, Jackie Smith comes at you with Into the Necrosphere. Wednesday, Wednesday you get a double shot. You get my podcast, Everything Went Black, as well as Iblis Manifestations, brought to you by Cheyenne of the band Trivax. On Thursday, you also get a double shot. You get, Necro Thursday, of course, which you're listening to right now, as well as day one of Soul Knox, brought to you by Carl Hikara. Friday is Mike Scandato's brother, John Draper, features in Spitball Media, which is I would say it's just sort of a pop culture show. Now, they definitely talk about horror movies on there, but there's also, comics, wrestling, like that sort of stuff too. Saturday is a day off. Sunday, Carl returns with Soul Knox. And Carl and I have been doing a thing called Darkness Weaves, which is a collaboration. And each month we switch off as to whose podcast hosts the episode. And it's an exploration of the work of Carl Edward Wagner, a criminally underrated and obscure dark fantasy, weird fiction, and horror writer. And right now we're going through the Kane short stories. And if you're unfamiliar with Kane, I recommend it. If you're into Conan and sort of sword and sorcery with a horror element to it, Kane is the kind of character you should definitely check out. And
Hmm.
that's it, man. That's a full week of killer content brought to you by people who, will not settle for mediocrity.
Yeah, I really enjoyed your Everything Went Black interview with our mutual friend Randy Larson.
Yeah, it's great having Randy back in the fold. I think we're going to be, doing more stuff together. For anyone out there, Randy and I used to co-host episodes of Metal Matters a few years ago, And when I stopped doing Metal Matters, he, came over to Everything Went Black, and we would do things called Road to Ruin, which is like our little sub series. So, on a semi-regular basis, Randy will be coming back and we're talking about stuff, and it's cool. And I think in general, I feel like Everything Went Black is better when it's a series of co-hosts talking about subjects as opposed to straight up like interviewed type stuff. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I missed that show. I missed Metal Matters and Road to Ruin.
Yeah, I think it'll be good to have Randy back, even if it's not on a regular schedule. It's like the only, I just become, maybe because I interviewed so many people over the years, and like I feel like Jackie's got it locked down with like, doing metal interviews. And I just enjoy talking about subjects, you know what I mean? And I like when Ralph comes on, or Randy, or what we do at Necromaniacs. And I have like returning guests on Everything Went Black. Like, for example, there's another Addams Family episode coming out soon because they have some stuff to talk about.
Nice. Those
Yeah.
episodes are always great.
Yeah, they're awesome people, man. And anyone out there who hasn't checked out Hellhole, that's currently on Shudder right now, and our chat is going to cover some of the behind the scenes of that movie. So yeah.
No, excellent. And if you're in the area, check out Randy's record store, Little Lost Records in Stafford Springs, Connecticut.
That's right. That's right. So we have one phone call this week.
Mm.
We, as you guys know, you can call us on the Necro phone, and that's 908-913-0782. And this week we've got a call from Mike from Pennsylvania.
Hey, Necro Hoods. Mike from Telford here. Just calling to touch base. I'm on my lunch break here. I'm feeling kind of run down this week, man. Hope to get reinvigorated here with this change of season coming up. Glad it's not so fucking hot. Just watched a movie last night called Allison's Birthday. And I know you guys have heard of that. It's in that fucking All the Haunts Be Ours box. And they just announced a volume 2 to that, which I just pre-ordered. So I figured I better get watching that box set. We only seen a few things out of that, me and a couple other things. But Allison's Birthday is an Australian movie from the early 80s. It was fucking fantastic. Never heard of that before. I don't really want to give away too much. It involves a cult and a girl and a Ouija board, and it was really, some of it was on the nose, like they had to explain everything to you, which I don't always need, but it was a really good movie. The story was really fantastic. They wrapped it up nicely in the end. So if you haven't seen that, you haven't watched it yet, like myself, and holding on to that box set and haven't really dug into it, I recommend that Allison's Birthday. Hope you guys are doing good. I got to work tomorrow, Saturday yet, and anyway, who gives a fuck? You guys take it easy. The show's been fantastic, and can't wait for this coming Thursday. Later.
Always good to hear from you, Mike. Yeah, dude, that all the Haunts Be Ours box set is really, really cool. And then, yes, Allison's Birthday, pretty damn good. It's an Australian film, and it's part of obviously a gothic folk horror. And are you familiar with that box set, Jeff?
No, I'm not.
Dude, Severin put out this box set a couple of years ago called All the Haunts Be Ours, and it's like an international collection of folk horror. And there's like a documentary on there. There's like, which the documentary is infinitely rewatchable. Like I watched that documentary many times over the years. There's a book. There's a CD of Arthur Macken's The White People reading. There's all sorts of cool stuff. And there's a volume 2 coming out, which is on pre-order right now, which I have not pulled the trigger on yet, but I am going to be getting volume 2 of that.
Excellent. It does sound great.
Yeah. Yeah. So Mike, thanks for calling. Thanks for checking in. It's always great hearing from you. And yeah, dude, someday, man, when you and I just need to like meet up, maybe like on some show that Tombs plays out in Pennsylvania or something like that. Or some event. We got to coordinate a meeting somehow. I definitely love to have a cup of coffee with you and hang out and talk. So and that goes for everyone. Like I've met a bunch of you guys out on the last tour we did. So that's always an open door. And I know that I don't look like especially in the setting of touring, I look really closed off to most people, but if you want to come up and say hi, by all means, please do so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I always love talking to people about the things we talk about on the show. You know, I'm not out and about traveling like you are, but you know, anyone feel free to hit me up on Instagram. I talk to a lot of people, you know, about some of the things that we discuss on the show, and people who agree with me, people who disagree with me. So, and it's fun, you know, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. So that brings us to this week's show, this
Mm.
week's feature film, Oddity. Now, there's been some discussion about this movie too. It seems like it's getting a little bit of steam, you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Written and directed by Damian McCarthy. It's 98 minutes long. Released at South by Southwest on March 8th, 2024. And then theatrically, August 30th, 2024. But available streaming for rental, which is how I watched it.
Yes.
Yeah. Now I don't know, Damian McCarthy, you guys might remember him from the film Caveat he did a few years ago.
Yeah,
And,
I
yeah,
checked that out. Yeah, it was good. I don't remember it that well, but I remember enjoying it.
I enjoyed Caveat. I thought it was like real creepy. Um, there's a tie-in actually between the two films. If I don't know if you caught that, probably did.
I did catch that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll run down the cast real quick. It's actually a fairly small cast. I'm gonna probably mangle some of these, you know, Irish Gaelic names here, you know, Brit names. It looks like okay, so we got Gwilyn Lee as Ted Timmis, Carolyn Bracken as Danny Timms, and also as Darcy Odello. Todd Murphy as Olin Bull, Caroline Menton as Yana, Steve Wall as Ivan, and Jonathan French as Declan Bartlett. And apologies out there. I know we've got some Brits who listen to this. So please, you know, I'm not my ignorance, please don't be offended by it.
Also, I just want to say before we get started, for you know, spoiler warning, there might be some things that happen in this movie that would be hard to discuss without bringing them up. And I really feel the best way to go into this movie is completely blind, because that's pretty much how I went into it.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen this movie, maybe forego listening to this episode and checking it out. That's it if you're interested in this film. Because it's just you should watch it first and then listen to this. And you
Yeah.
know, so yeah, I also want people to watch this movie because it's awesome. And well, I've kind of given away my rating on this thing, but yeah, it's you know, I think very highly of this movie. So yeah,
Yeah.
go out and see this and then maybe listen to the episode.
That's one of the things that had me intrigued about it. Is I talked to you, and you shot me a text saying, let's just say you were very you thought very fondly of it. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it made me even more curious to check it out. And you know, it didn't end up being what I thought it was going to be. Not that that's a bad thing, but I was expecting something completely different than what I got, which is yeah, it's a nice surprise.
So just real quick before we get into it, what did you expect this film to deliver to you?
I thought it was going to be more of a ghost story. And while it has elements of that, that's not really the focus of the film at all. Um, it's a little bit of a mystery, more so than I expected. And although the movie has a twist, it doesn't rely on the twist to make it enjoyable. Like I thought the twist was fairly obvious, actually, but you know, it's just more of it's just sort of like a moody atmosphere piece, more than anything, and
Yeah,
not what I expected.
definitely the atmosphere is what grabbed me. The story actually is pretty simple, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's essentially you know, a husband and wife murder mystery, really,
yeah, yeah,
with a
absolutely.
supernatural element to it, you know. And the supernatural element is, well, a couple things. Well, yeah, the supernatural element is her sister, her twin sister. So I mentioned that Carolyn Bracken plays two roles in here. So there's they're sisters. Darcy is blind and she is the owner of a curio shop, like a curiosity shop.
Yeah,
And
love those kind of places.
oh yeah, dude. They're still out there. You can find them, you know.
It's a great one here in Austin.
Yep. And Danny is her sister, and she's married to this dude, Ted, who what is he like some sort of like financial guy or something as a job. He is like a guy, he makes money, you know what I mean?
Oh, he's a doctor.
A doctor. There you go. See.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
It's a big part of the plot.
It actually, yeah. Sorry, I just got a little lost the train of thought there for a second. Yeah, so they buy this property out in the woods, like way out in the British countryside, in the UK countryside. I'm not sure what part of the UK this is in exactly. So
yeah, I actually thought this was Ireland.
yeah, you're probably right. I'm probably fucking this thing up completely, but let's say out in the countryside, it's like this very, very old you know, structure that they live in. And so Danny is out there on her own, and right away you have this heavy, dreadful feel to the film. She's out there, so she's sleeping in a tent, and they haven't really fully moved into this location yet.
I liked the touch of the tent. I thought that was nice. Yeah, like you said, it's this gothic, creepy. Like maybe it was like they might have said, and I didn't catch it, but maybe it was like a mill or something, somewhere where they made I don't know, buttons or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, this also speaks to a big fascination that I have, which one of the reasons why I love reading like Robert E. Howard and Carl Edward Wagner and sword and sorcery in general is the idea of ruins being re-inhabited by people. You know, especially in the Kane short stories, because he's like an immortal. So there's parts of his short stories where he goes to these cities that are in ruins that he remembers being like these bustling metropolises, or he'll know the history of a city where he goes to it and like a completely different people have inhabited the city, but he remembers the older version of it where like, you know, some non-humans or something built the original city that the city was built on, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So whenever there's like an ancient structure, and you see, you know, this is like why I'm so fascinated with Malatin Cemetery in Cologne too, when I went out there last year or 2 years ago. You see things that are just ancient and old, and the modern world has re-inhabited them in some ways. And that's the feeling I got from the structure that they were moving, that the Timmis family was moving into. You know, it's like this repurposed ruin that they're renovating and making modern. And it still has like that wild, haunted element to it. And she's living in this tent, which is a modern artifice that she's living in. So that really, really captured me at that point.
Yeah, it also speaks to the fact that, like, you know, she's sleeping in that tent. It's a huge, huge house, and like she feels more comfortable in this like confined space when she's out there by herself. That seems like something I would do. Like,
and it also makes me think about how like she's like an interloper in like this ancient world in some ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I did find a little odd that a doctor would own something like that. That's more like I could see someone in like a huge rock band owning that who's like, you know, worth multi-million dollars. But you know, whatever.
But dig this though. I mean, doctors make bank, you know. I mean, I don't know about in Europe, but in the United States with the, you know, like you know, these guys make a lot of money, you know what I mean? But you know, think about Danny and Darcy, right? Darcy is into like this dark, macabre sort of stuff, right?
Yes.
So maybe Danny was that type of person as well, because Danny also doesn't really match up with her husband Ted's vibe either, you know?
That's true. Yeah. He's very much a man of science, very stiff and cold. And, you know, Danny, you know, has a sister. I gather that she grew up in sort of an environment where occults and supernatural was part of her life.
Yeah.
And, you know, she's trying to take pictures of ghosts while she's here alone in the house.
Yeah. So maybe the purchase of this house or this structure, this building had to do more with Danny's wants, and Ted just sort of acquiesced to that. And that might have been, you know, obviously there's some marital strife too that's going on, which is not initially apparent in the film.
Right. It's sort of it's a bit of a slow build. And Well, this whole intro scene was really good. Just like a real like, you know, tension 101.
Yeah.
It comes up with this great scenario. This scary house woman is home alone. She gets a knock on her door from someone who kind of looks like a Viking.
Yeah, Tina said that the dude looked like the father of Dan, the guy who plays guitar in Tombs. So so it's like, I'm like, oh yeah. She always points that out whenever some like sketchy looking long-haired bearded guy rolls up in a movie. She's like, oh, it's a future Tombs member or something. I'm like, oh, okay.
I said that. I was like, this guy looks like he could play guitar in Enslaved or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that's Olin Bull, the guy who shows up. And he's delivering this like very creepy message to her, very foreboding, about how
Yeah.
someone's in the house, and if he has to she has to let him in, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and you really put yourself in Danny's shoes. Like, who is this guy? What's going on? What would you do kind of vibe. And I like you really only see like his eyes because she opens up a slot in the door. And obviously she's very sketched out by by this guy and what he's saying, but you see that doubt on Danny's face, like, oh, maybe he is telling the truth. Maybe there is something to this. That was a very well done, tense scene.
So they get around the cell phone thing, which is like a bane
Yeah,
to modern horror by like,
yeah,
oh yeah, there's only one spot in the house where they get like service or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like very sketchy.
yeah. Becomes kind of a big plot point too.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, that adds to the whole tension of the scene.
Yeah, and the way the scene plays out, I love that. Like when it kind of cuts to Danny's face, and then the door, and then boom, cuts to the title card. So you don't know for a little while. Did she answer the door? What happened?
Yeah. Yeah. Very well done. Now I'm going to mention this thing too, which I was thinking too. After I watched this movie and I thought about it for a couple of days, I was like, I'm not saying this is a giallo by any stretch of the imagination. However, this does remind me of like kind of like an Italian horror film, sort of in some ways. You got this foreboding house, which could be like a castle or a mansion or something.
Mm,
There's like the husband, there's like infidelity, there's a twin sister, that kind of thing. You know what I'm trying to say?
absolutely, yeah. I totally get that. This has like a very European feel to it. Like I can imagine if there was like an American remake, it would be a very different thing as far as the tone goes.
Yeah, and the age of the building and all this other stuff. Like the age of that building is probably older than the United States. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's paced a little slower than I think most American audiences might be used to.
So this is when we learn about Darcy, and she's like the weird sister, twin sister,
Yeah.
and Dan has actually moved on in the relationship like a year later, which I found initially like, where I was like, that's kind of cold. And Tina was like, she's like, if I get killed, I'm gonna haunt you if you find another woman. So I'm like, okay, calm down there. No one's going anywhere. You know what I mean? So yeah, so it's a year later, and Ted has a new woman in his life, Yana, and
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, Yana's a piece of work, man.
yeah. But
um
you kind of have that like, there's like, wow, this guy recovered from this thing really quickly because it turns out that his wife was murdered.
yes, by one of his patients, or was some a patient where he worked.
All right. So this is the part where you gotta this is like a big plot part. So spoiler alert. All right. Initially, they think that Olin, the guy who shows up at the front door, is the murderer. Okay, so this is like, this is something you got to watch the movie before you check this out. So and he's a patient at the facility at the mental hospital that Ted works at, that Ted is a doctor at.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, that's if you're this far into it, you realize that is kind of an important part of the movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And at this point, you really don't know where it's going, or what, the movie hasn't completely shown its hand yet. So it's believable that he is possibly the killer.
Yeah. Because all the fingers are pointing to him. He shows up at night. He, convinces her to let him in, and then she's brutally murdered, and he ends up back in this facility. And Ted apparently was the one who discharged him initially, and now he's back, incarcerated in this mental institution.
Yeah, he's not there for for too much of the movie though, because he is brutally murdered.
So enter Ivan, which is sort of, I guess, Ted's henchman in some ways.
Yeah, yeah, to say the least. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so they show interactions with him and Olin, and Ivan, his character is the guy himself is probably a sociopath as well. He's definitely has a psychopathic tendencies, and brutal, sort of sadistic guy.
Yeah, and you get that you get that through scenes, like little scenes here and there. I think every character in this movie is pretty well developed, and fairly quickly too. You get a good sense of who they are, why they are the way they are, and especially with him, like he gets like two scenes that really show what a fucking psychopath this guy is.
Yeah. So Ted stops by to see Darcy at her shop, the cabinet
Yeah,
of, aptly called her cabinet of curiosities.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I really liked the scene because it really establishes that Darcy is very much into this kind of stuff, and Danny is or Ted. I mean, he's kind of dismissive of this whole thing.
Yeah. This is where they scan through the shop, and this is where we see the doll from Caveat on the shelf, which I thought was a nice touch.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. That was a nice surprise. So these movies sort of seem to coexist in the same universe.
Yeah. Now, not to go beat for beat in this thing, because I want you guys all to watch this movie. Danny's invited out to the house where Ted's living there with Yana, who he met as a she's like a pharmaceutical representative, and they met on the job apparently.
Yeah, well, she's sort of invited. It's one of those things like, hey, you should stop by sometime.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, the door was open for her to stop by, and then she appears there. Now, this is this part I thought was interesting because you look out out of the front door, and she's just standing there. Right now, she's blind.
Yeah.
So how the hell did you get there?
Yeah, I was.
They never established that.
Yeah, well, it even shows that she's standing next to a car, which has to be Ted or the girlfriend's car. But like for a brief second, I thought, did she drive?
Yeah.
And
so that's interesting and intentional too, I imagine. There was no explanation, so it's like left to your imagination. Did she ride there on the night wind, or did she like teleport or something, or did she simply just take an Uber out there? I don't know.
Yeah, and that also speaks to the tone of the movie, where strange things happen and people don't react to them like they're strange. And that's one of those moments. Like no one pointed like, hey, how'd she get here? You know what I mean? It's strange. Or what is she doing here?
Yeah, so before she shows up, a box arrives too.
Oh God.
Okay, that gets some like mysterious box arrives. And so when Darcy enters the house, and they're interacting with Yana and Ted, and you get the sense that Darcy's disapproving of him because of his quick, or for actually at this stage of the game, for an unknown reason, Darcy disapproves of Ted. There's something, she's there for a purpose. You can see there's intention for her visit.
Yeah, there's a malice to her. She's different from the previous scene she was in, where Ted is in her shop. They hug. She seems happy to see him. When she shows up now, She seems angry and combative
Yeah.
and demanding. Like, Ted and the girlfriend are like, oh, we had plans, we weren't expecting you, and she's like, oh, that's whatever, I'm hungry, will you get me some food, or like, can you do this for me? And that, like, basically saying like, I'm not going anywhere. It's she's very confrontational.
Yeah. She's like, I'm here for the duration, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like, go about your business, I'll just hang out. And again, it's strange, and they don't really act like it's that's strange. And considering the gift, the thing in this chest that she delivers to her, it's very strange.
So this is where we see the life-size wooden uh mannequin, this like statue that is like part of the promotion of this film, you know. And that's an odd thing to give as a gift, I think, you know.
I thought so too. Like, I was got what would your reaction be? You're getting married soon. What if someone that showed up on your doorstep as a gift?
I would immediately burn it, probably.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, at least a girlfriend mentions like, this is like, why would she get us this? It's such a weird. It's like, why, but obviously we find out it has a purpose for being there. But I
Yeah,
really like the design of this thing.
it looks great. Um, there's like, this is they notice that it's subtly moving, you know,
Yeah,
what
very, very subtly.
which is kind of a trope I think that started back in Terrified, the Rugno film, where there's like this very still thing that subtly moves from scene to scene.
Yeah, I wrote that down like this. It reminded me of Terrified, when that kid is just sitting at the table. How did it get there? You don't see it get there. And then, it'll cut away to someone doing something in another room and come back, and you'll see it's in a slightly different position.
Yeah.
Sort of like if that was you, you'd think, oh, I thought the head was facing the other way. Oh, I guess I must be wrong. It's very subtle.
So Ted has to leave because he's got to go to work. He works nights, I guess, at the psychiatric facility. So he's gone, and Yana and Darcy are by themselves in the house.
Yeah, this is some of the best stuff in the movie.
Yeah, and Yana drops her cell phone and it's broken, so she can't. She's cut off from anybody,
Yeah.
And then she is the one who discovers that inside the mannequin's head there's a hole, and she finds some pictures of Danny and Darcy, a vial of blood, and a lock of hair. Okay, so there's like a little bit of a sort of a magical
Yeah.
incantation, sort of witchcrafty thing going on right now.
Yeah, and that stuff isn't ever really explained. I like that the movie kind of makes you connect the dots a little bit yourself. Because initially when I saw the lock of hair, I thought, oh, this is some sort of like, I bet it belongs to the girlfriend.
That's what I thought too originally. That
Yeah,
somehow this is going to be like a murderous fetish doll or something like that.
right. And I think it's around then, like, you really realize what's really happening in the movie. And that, or at least I did. I mean, I was mostly right. I thought that, the girlfriend would be more involved, but she wasn't. And you realize this isn't quite a ghost story, but more of like, almost like Pumpkinhead, like a tale of revenge.
Yeah, yeah, it's a revenge flick now. Okay. So Yana pieces out. She's like, fuck this shit, I'm out.
Yeah, yeah.
So she's
She finds her car keys in the box that
in the
thing was
yep,
in.
yeah.
Which is sort of another like like that. She can't find her keys. Earlier in the film, Danny couldn't find her phone. I
Yeah.
thought, I thought that would be connected as more, but it was a little bit of like a plot contrivance. You needed to keep her there. That's why she couldn't find her keys. Didn't really end up having much to do with the story.
So Ted comes back, and this is kind of where the whole thing gets revealed. You know what I mean? Like he returns, Darcy's by herself, she's alone, she's upstairs, and this is where this is kind of this I don't mean this in a bad way, but like the Scooby-Doo reveal of everything.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So Darcy is actually she tells Ted that she knows that he is not directly, but responsible for Danny's murder. All right.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And that she actually killed, because Olin gets murdered in the facility, in the psychiatric facility. This happens earlier in the film. And she tells Ted that she actually killed Olin. So that not for like any kind of revenge at that point, but just to see what he saw through his eye. And
Mm.
she saw the whole story unravel as to who murdered Danny, and you know, and that he actually is innocent, and he was you know, the misdirection of the film was that Olin was the murderer, but he's actually innocent, and he was actually showing up to warn Danny that there was a killer in the house.
Yes. Yeah. Which yeah, I didn't quite see that it was going in this direction at all. And you sort of like throughout you see these flashbacks to Ted sort of like hatching this plan with this orderly he seems to have a relationship with that I don't know, no one thinks is strange.
Yeah. It's real sketchy, the relationship with Ivan. You know what I mean? Or they're like friends in a very creepy way. Or Ivan is like kind of yeah, like there's this like very, very odd relationship that they have.
Yeah, it's almost like you wonder how long Ted was planning this out. Like because you can mention that Ivan was a patient too
Yeah.
at one point,
Yep.
which you know, again, a little weird that they would let a patient work in that place, but you know, hey, whatever. So you know, you're piecing it together. You think, oh man, so Ted had this idea for a while that he was going to get rid of his wife, and thinking about it, like, oh, how am I going to do it? Oh, you know, I'll let this guy out and get him a job and befriend him. He's sort of setting him up the entire time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the conversations between Ted and Ivan, there's one in particular that was really unsettling, but also oddly, like, I don't know, like a slight undercurrent of comedy to it. When he's like, "What do you think the crime was sexual in nature?" and he keeps
Dude,
bringing it up.
I have that in my notes here where you get like basically there's this the movie's not funny at all. There's like no humor in it. So this, just compared to the rest of the film, it is a slightly humorous undertone because it's like there's no irony or anything in this film. Yeah, and the guy's like, Ivan is like, oh, you know, he's hinting that maybe he wanted to like rape his wife and stuff like that before he killed her, which is dark as fuck, man. Like
Yeah,
that's not even funny
yeah,
at all. But
yeah.
in the compared to the rest of the movie, that is funny. You know?
Well, the fact that he keeps bringing it up, you
Yeah.
know, it's just it's kind of humorous, and so you see like how psychotic Ivan is and how cold and clinical Ted is, because he's just, you know, while this conversation's happening, he's like writing notes and, you know, going about his business, and he's like, you know, maybe he thinks he's doing like, no, she doesn't need to suffer, you know, she just needs to die, like she's a problem for me, it's gotta go. That's cold.
And yeah, it's just very, very interesting, that part. And you know, Ivan is just a bad guy, you know.
Yeah, to say the very least. And you know, Ted's a bad guy too. They're both bad people.
Yeah. So Ted sets up that this is like kind of I, something about this scene reminded me of like EC Comics in some ways, because the
Yeah.
yeah, it's like the end part where the all right, so Darcy murdered Olin. All right, so that's, you know, kind
Yeah.
of
Oops.
a bad thing for her to do. Um, Ted goes back to work, and he sets up this trap with a trap door and his phone, and Darcy, remember, she's blind, right?
Yeah.
So he calls from the hospital, the phone rings, Darcy gets up and steps in the trap door and falls to her death. Okay, so
Almost death. But yeah,
or almost
she's
death. Yeah.
yeah.
So, but there is like that thing of like, there's this, I found not odd, but I found it interesting that there is like a little bit of like everyone gets their comeuppance in this, you
Yeah.
know?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I picked up on the EC comic thing as well.
And also the very, very end part is very EC Comics too, you
Yeah,
know?
very much so. Yeah.
Yeah.
This could have been in an anthology film, like a 30-minute version of this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and then we see her life slowly ebbing from her, and and you realize like, okay, well, she killed Olin, who's an innocent guy, so she can't. She's tarnished. Like her soul is somehow tarnished by that. So we have to like give her some kind of retribution for that. They're her motivations were just to find out who killed her or to get revenge on her sister's death. You know what I mean?
Right.
But inadvertently there was some collateral damage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I like too that like it showed like her connection to this thing. So obviously we know why this sort of mannequin is there. She is the mannequin is there to do her bidding. It's like she gets her revenge through this thing.
Yeah,
And I assume that's how she killed Olin. It would have to be, she,
yeah.
and then he says she sends it after Ivan. Yeah, she was gonna send it after Ted, but she kind of changes course. She's like, I want Ted to suffer. I want to ruin him, but
Yeah.
I want to kill Ivan.
Yeah. So she sends it after Ivan. Um, actually, before we get further into it, there was one other item that we left out, which was was it like a bell? When
Yes.
Ted visits her in the beginning of the film, she has this bell in her hand, and she's like, "Oh, this was like if you ring this, like the ghost of the bellhop from this hotel comes to you," and Ivan's like, "Of course, this is bullshit." You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ted is so dismissive of everything,
But this
and
plays into the very end of the film, so that's why I have to mention that item right
yeah,
now.
yes, it
Yeah,
does. Yeah.
yeah.
And I like the little like chase between Ivan and the mannequin was nice. You start to see like the budgetary restraints this movie had a little bit with that. Like I think it wisely chooses to show the statue when it's moving in more shadows. You don't really get a great look at it when it's in motion.
Which is cool, which is great. I
Yeah,
dig that. I mean, I didn't need to see the thing moving really, and also to be honest, there isn't really a lot of gore in this film, a lot of the killing goes off screen.
yeah, yeah. You see a little bit of the aftermath, like Olin's death, and you see, blood splattered tent when Danny dies, and when Darcy falls through the trap. You see more of the aftermath than the actual death.
So Ivan actually survives the attack, and he ends up back in the asylum there, the mental facility. And then Ted manipulates his death, because he doesn't want Ivan to confess to the murder. So Ted has Ivan. There's another patient. He manipulates this other patient to go in there and kill Ivan.
Yeah,
So Ted is completely alone now. Yana has left him, and he's living out at the house by himself. And
a little weird.
which is a little weird. Um, so on the doorstep, there's another box. It's that's being delivered to him from Darcy's cabinet of curiosities, and he finds this tiny bell in there. You know, he shows Ted sitting at the table, and he kind of is like, I don't believe in any of this shit, but all the stuff he's been through, he's like, fuck it, let me try ringing this bell. I don't
Yeah,
think
yeah,
anything's gonna happen. So he rings the bell, and the final scene is the spectral bellhop there looming over his shoulder. And if I remember correctly, Ted just kind of like like laughs a little bit and chuckles it and realizes that his fate is sealed by this whole thing.
yeah. It's a great ending. Like he's just sitting there smiling arrogantly of look at what I did. I got away with it. And this dumb, psychic mumbo jumbo. What a laugh.
Yeah.
Unaware that he's that thing's about to kill him.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
like I said, it's just like so many elements of this film come together at the ending. And just in general, the movie really had this like feeling of dread. You had no idea what this, now we've ruined it for everybody, but but you kind of didn't know what's going on at all. There's like you didn't know what direction it was going to take. Like similar to you, I thought it was going to be a ghost story or something like that, but it's more of a revenge flick, and then there's, like I said, the plot a little bit reminiscent of maybe like an Argento film or something, where there's, like I said earlier, there's like this old house, and infidelity in marriage, and a mistress, and all this kind of stuff, and supernatural intervention and that kind of thing. And then the ending had that morality, uh retribution vibe that's in a lot of the EC Comics stuff, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. This is more of an exercise in tension than it is about a whodunit. There is that element to it, but I really feel like as an audience member, you're ahead. You see where it's going when the characters start to interact. Like, oh, this guy had his wife killed. It seems pretty obvious to me, but like that twist is not like it. It's okay that you can figure it out before it shows it to you, because this is just more about creating atmosphere than it is about trying to surprise you with twists, which I liked.
And I always like whenever there's an inanimate mannequin that comes to life by some force. That's like a thing, a recurring obsession that I have. So I think that's really cool.
Now, I got to ask you something. I mean, a couple plot holes in this movie, like, and a big one. Who sent that bell?
That's an excellent question, man. You know, it could have been maybe I was thinking about that too, and maybe Darcy foresaw all this stuff and had it sent, you know, I don't know, like before because this whole thing really only takes place within the like a day or so, really.
Yeah, a majority of the movie. There is a time jump in the beginning, but yeah, it's like a couple days, pretty much.
Yeah. So what I came up with is that Darcy knew that she wasn't going to make it through this whole experience, and that
Mm,
she had it sent, like, whatever, like second day air, or not air, but like, she mailed it so that in a few days it would show up.
right. Yeah. Yeah. That, I mean, I kind of like that's what I figured. It is just kind of like a moderate plot hole. I mean, and when you think about what's happening in this movie in a real world context, it is a little like implausible. Like two people die in this house, and an orderly dies, and
Oh
the,
yeah,
the man
yeah.
accused of the murder. No one thinks this is suspicious. you
Well,
know?
usually the guy, whenever a wife is killed, the first suspect is the husband always.
Yeah, and exactly. And
Yeah.
like it seemed, even as in, just watching it seemed obvious that something isn't quite right with Ted. He's very cold. He moved on from his wife's murder very, very quickly and just wants to go on with his life. It's just suspicious to me. But, whatever. I mean, it doesn't
It
need to be 100% grounded in reality.
it did not detract from my enjoyment of the film.
Yeah, and that's what from what you told me, you really enjoyed this movie.
I
Like,
did. I did.
yeah. Um, so what would you get? What would you give it?
5 out of 5 for me.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I
Okay.
loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I kind of like looked around at the reactions to this movie, and it's getting very, very positive reviews. There are a lot of people putting it as their number one movie of the year.
This is one of those few instances where my opinion aligns with other people's opinions, I think. And I
Mm.
do think this is right now, this is probably going to be my number one for the year.
Wow. I mean, see, that's what surprised me. I did like this movie. Don't get me wrong, but I don't feel like I quite loved it as much as everyone else did.
Yeah.
For me, it's a 4. It's a very, very
Okay.
solid 4. Really good. Really liked it. It's a little bit like it. I don't know. It's a very simple story, and it's told really well. But I guess I just thought there would be a little bit more to it. But you know, whatever, that's fine. And especially since you telling me how much you loved it, I was like, oh, this is going to be like some deep, dark, like head trip, and it's really not that at all. It's sort of a simply told story, but told really well.
Yeah, it was oh shit. My printer is printing right now.
Uh-oh.
Um yeah, it was a simple story, you know what I mean? But I thought it was really effective. I enjoyed it. And yeah, it was just it had the atmosphere and the sense of dread is what really got me.
Yeah, that stuff is great. There's a couple other minor things that bugged me. Like I bring this up on the podcast all the time. The movie had a little bit of that streaming feel. You know what I mean? You watch some like movies made for Netflix or Hulu.
Yeah.
This kind of had that feel to it that took away from the atmosphere of the movie a little bit. Not enough to completely derail it, but you know, almost felt like this could have been like a couple $1 million Blumhouse production with the way it looked. I don't know what it is about movies that have this modern movies that have that look to them, that feel to them.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's more of a budgetary thing, you know,
Yeah, yeah. But I mean,
but
even like, I
yeah,
mean, with that, there's some great atmospheric stuff. Like when Ted comes back to the house and the power's gone out, he's walking around with a lantern. Uh, and it's real quiet. Like, it's just moments like that that really make the movie like so atmospheric and spooky.
yeah, definitely. And that's what I reacted to. And the sense of dread and just the whole thing really worked for me.
Yeah, very interesting filmmaker. This is only his second movie, and I think it's an improvement over his last movie. Not that I disliked it, but I found myself thinking about this one a little bit more. Whereas Caveat, I kind of forgotten about it already.
Yeah, no, me too, man. And I think, I mean, Caveat I thought was cool, enjoyed it. Definitely we liked it, I remember. But this is just like leaps and bounds further. And I'm looking for number 3 from this guy, man, you know, and I'm really, really excited about it.
Yeah, and you know, Shudder picked this up, and you know, shout out to Shudder, man. They're really stepping it up every year of their existence. Like their quality of the films just get better and better. Um, but this is gonna, you know, I think get some eyes on it with all the hype around it and people looking, you know, for a cool ghost story. And you know, they'll probably stumble upon this and maybe yet again get something they didn't quite expect, but enjoy it.
Earlier this year, Shudder had a kind of a shaky start with their content. So yeah, it's real stoked on where they're going now.
Yeah, I mean, they've had some great stuff. A couple missteps here and there. You know, neither of us really enjoyed that in a violent nature, but
Yeah.
you know, overall, like the batting average is pretty high. I mean, you got this, you got Late Night with the Devil. It's really good. Late Night with the Devil will probably make an appearance at my
Oh yeah.
top of the year. But you know, hey, with the way this year's going, who knows, man? There's still looking last night. There's at least like 4 films that I haven't seen yet that I still really need to see.
We need to do our year wrap up literally at the last week of this
Yeah,
year because Nosferatu is coming out like on Christmas Day, I think, or something like that.
yeah, and that is my most anticipated movie of the year.
Yeah, yeah. Eggers, you know, Nosferatu is like gonna be. I'm looking forward to that.
That's going to be crushing if it's not good. I
Yeah,
won't be able to handle it. Like
yeah,
I'm looking forward to it so much.
yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen that or Cuckoo or
Yep,
there's a
that's
couple
another
other
one.
yeah, a couple other things I've seen trailers for that I got to see. Like this is an unusually strong year where sometimes I struggle to come up with 6 horror films that I thought were great, and the struggle this time is going to be narrowing it to 6.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening, everyone. And yeah, go out and see this movie. You know, obviously, you know, we ruined a lot of this for you, but you know, once again, this is a great. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to his next movie, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Take care.
Later.